What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Free China Pod. Back at it again. What's up, Duder?
Hey.
We're in the middle of another flood here in Kaohsiung, so
Yeah, this is dog. Yeah.
it's not great, but it's what happens when you have two typhoons barreling toward your part of the island.
Climate change.
Yep. Well, the good thing is this will happen for a while, and then we'll all boil in seawater, so it's okay. Got some hot stuff today, bud?
Well, first, I want to ask you because I'm not a big fan of Michael Bloomberg, but I'm a fan of Bloomberg News. I think that they're they're pretty capital focused. I would say that they cover a much wider variety of international news and economic news, and they aren't. I mean, while some of them are pro-capitalist, there's a pretty good mix, and they're pretty tough on China. So I like that resource. But other than that, sometimes when I can't get around the paywall, I found that a lot of my old news sources are hot trash. MSN has been getting abhorrent. They keep posting this Washington Examiner's quote unquote articles, which are not really articles. They're just opinion pieces. I look back on The Guardian and even The Intercept now. Ugh, The Intercept, I used to think it was good, but a lot of it is really clickbaity trash with misleading titles that actually don't reflect at all what is within the article. So I wonder if you have any things you recommend.
I mean, I still like The Intercept. I agree that a lot of their stuff is clickbaity in terms of the titles, but I think a lot of
titles are dog shit.
I think a lot of basically all news is like that now.
Well, some of them were deliberately deceptive, I would say. I found a couple of these articles here where they're claiming something, and then you actually look in the substance of the article. It's not actually incorrect, but it's totally misleading in order to get you to click it and be like, wow, if that's true, that's crazy. And then you click it in. It's not true. It's not crazy. It's just a good title.
Do you have examples?
I have several here, yeah. You want me to find them?
I mean, give one or two. I don't want to throw a news site under the bus and just...
Okay, here. Scientific American retracted pro-Palestine article without any factual errors. This is on the headline of their site, okay? So it's first of all, why is Scientific American, which is a science magazine, weighing in, having scientific articles talking about political issues, and then retracting them? That sounds crazy, right? It's neither an article, nor is it scientific. They had an open letter published on there, and they just retracted the open letter. So it wasn't a scientific article. And of course, there's no factual errors because there's no facts in it. It's a fucking opinion. It's an opinion letter. So that's an example. It's just blatant. It's totally misleading from top to bottom. That's just one example. I'm just pulling out of my browser history here.
Okay, that's fair. I still think they do a lot of good FOIA stuff, and a lot of this leak stuff that they handle. I think is important journalism that a lot of other places aren't doing. Also, I would say you said Bloomberg is tough on China. They're a pretty far leftist news site that doesn't go easy on China, which is also nice.
When you say far leftist, what do you mean?
That's what people would describe them as. I feel
Bloomberg?
like. No. I'm talking about The Intercept.
Oh, you just said Bloomberg, did you not?
I said you said that Bloomberg was a lot of times had anti-Chinese articles. Using that as kind of a loose term.
Oh, here's another one I found. So the headline: at least 7 Colombians in Haiti assassination received U.S. training. It sounds wow, that's actually crazy. It seems it's the U.S. was involved. And then you actually open the article. It's most of the Colombians in all of the Colombian armed forces have received U.S. training. And it's in the whole point of the article is that it's totally unsurprising that there were lots of links with the U.S. since basically the entire Colombian armed forces have been trained by the United States at one point or another. So the article's headline sounds completely bombastic. And then if you actually open it, you see that it's not bombastic at all. It's actually quite boring and
yeah, the one
not saying much.
Yeah, I do think that people shouldn't make misleading titles, but I do think that could be a way, again with a leftist news source, again using that term loosely.
It seems just a copy of The Guardian, though. It's getting to be like that, a gross copy.
Don't throw out that smear. But I think
even the font is the same.
But I think that can be good because I know a lot of I need to find a better word for this. A lot of lefties read that, so hopefully they'll see that title and be maybe they'll be oh yeah, go in with their biases. Then if they actually read it, they'll be oh okay, maybe it's not as dangerous or suspicious as I thought.
What I like, though, I like to read news that I think that the news itself, well, some of it is really mixed quality here, but the point of reading the news should be to learn more about the topic, to find out exactly what's happening and get lots of details. And I feel like lots of news is clickbaity trash where you're just learning about some specific instance, not learning about the greater developments in a like a long-standing issue, important political issues around the world.
Sounds like you should visit a library, my friend. But no, I agree. I'm obviously kidding, but like, yeah, I agree in general that it's frustrating, and it's especially frustrating when it comes from organizations that I tend to agree with on their substance.
And by that you mean The Intercept.
In this specific case, but that's, I mean, in general, like, I'd love to take the trash out right now, but I have to take a fucking rowboat out. Sad. But I think it's happening all over. That would be my thing. But yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't know that I think Bloomberg is better, but I also read less Bloomberg than you.
I read a lot of Bloomberg. Bloomberg and MSN has been getting really trashed, but
MSN is just like an aggregator, though.
It's true.
It's not really a news source.
That's true, but what they do actually is they provide paywall, like cross paywall access to a lot of paywall behind paywall news sources. So it's a pretty useful aggregator. But lately, it's like a lot of really clickbaity trash and like less substantive news. It's like
it's what happens when you work on like a click-based model. You got to do all this advertising, man. People just want clicks.
Like us.
Yeah, but thankfully ours is like based on also our Patreon, which means that we're just like user funded. So if anyone, we sell out to our readers. At least that's better than selling
out to nobody. I will be broke for a long time before I sell out.
Well, we are broke now, so that is what it is. But it's
I'll sell my gold.
It's also nice that we like don't have to answer to like any sort of advertisers or have the threat of that. So
besides Google.
So you can't cancel us, folks. But yeah, I agree with the sentiment. Oh, and then your original question, which we obviously got way off of as we always do. My fault. Any good news sources? Recently, I've been reading a lot of David Dayen's work at the American Prospect. I think that one's pretty good. He does like a lot of stuff on the Biden administration, and kind of he's really critical, but he like talks about where they fall short. I also like David Sirota at the Daily Poster is his.
Never even heard of that.
There's small like Substack things, but basically these guys are like journalists and got out of like mainstream media because
the Daily Poster.
But yeah, those are two that like come directly to mind. I mean, obviously us. I'm right in the middle of writing 2 articles right now. One of them is another quick story we can talk about, which is, do you know Chris Wu?
Maybe.
He's have you heard of EXO?
Nope. The Korean.
It's like Korean/Chinese pop group.
Yeah, that's really not what I follow.
I don't either.
Really not.
I actually had never heard of his name, but he just got accused of sexual assault and rape in China, and now there's like up to
Is he Korean?
He's
Chinese.
Yeah, he's Chinese, but so there's a lot of aspects of the story that I think are interesting, and we can like you can read about it. We can talk about it more in depth at some point. But so anyway, his accuser, now a 19-year-old by the surname of Du, she came out and said there's like up to 30 women, some who are under 18, that he's like sexually assaulted. So that's like been a big story now because obviously he was like really famous, and before a lot of Chinese people loved him, and now because he spent some of his younger life in Canada, now they're saying like, go back to Canada, get out of here, you're not Chinese, you're Canadian. They've turned it into like a xenophobic thing where it's like, look at these like foreigners, even though he was born in China.
Is he a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
I doubt that. But
if he was allowed to go to Canada, why was he allowed to leave the country?
He went with his mom. This was when he was a child.
Right. What does his mom do? Is his mom a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't read his biography because I don't follow this dude.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's fairly likely.
I don't know almost anything. Maybe it's possible, but irregardless of that, that's been like one of the big things I've seen against him, and also like a lot of people saying that he has a small penis.
Why is a Chinese national in a Korean pop group?
from what I've heard it described as like a Chinese/Korean pop or Korean/Chinese pop group. I don't really know.
Does he wear makeup?
Don't follow this. Almost certainly. But this like kind of expands to like the bigger issue of like the Me Too movement in China and how the government doesn't really take it seriously, and women are. It also happens in the U.S. So like, let's not get it twisted and act like we're like so much better. But the court system is much worse there. But you have similar ideas about like women who have been sexually assaulted, that they're kind of like these used objects that like no one wants anymore, which is like a big thing that like a lot of these like Chinese feminist activists or anti-rape Me Too type activists, I don't know the exact word I should use for that, are trying to fight against like that kind of culture in China.
I think the whole culture of China is based on zero accountability for any wrong actions whatsoever. So I'm not surprised this is an issue, because the entire party is basically built on complete, what's the word? Where you can do something without being punished.
Immunity?
No.
Invulnerability?
No.
4 hours later.
Impunity. Well, there's a better word that I can't even think of right now. Anyway, they basically they can do whatever they want and face basically no consequences as long as they're well connected with whoever's leading the party at the time. With right now,
for sure.
Right now it's Xi Jinping. You can see with a lot of these party members who were purged recently, who had been alleged to have been committing corruption for pretty long extended periods of time. It's just when they run afoul of the person in charge that's when it's suddenly not tolerated any longer. That's a lot of the culture there right now, unfortunately, because of the Chinese Communist Party. So
for sure,
no surprises.
What I will say is that while I mean, I don't know if we should get into like nitpicky stuff. I think there's still a lot of issues in the United States with that as well. You can look at people who formerly championed these like Me Too movements in the Democratic Party now keeping pretty tight lips about any sort of investigation into people like Cuomo and Biden.
Cool, because they never believed it in the first place. They were just using it instrumentally to take out people they didn't like, which was very convenient for them. But I don't know. There's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of hypocrisy in America.
There certainly is, and it's very unfortunate. But like I said, I'm working on an article about that, so check out the site for that. And then I'm going to write hopefully a broader article about the Me Too movement in general in China.
So that connects with a big issue. Apparently, this is a big issue. I don't know why this becomes such a big issue in the U.S., which is between feminists and trans rights advocates in Los Angeles. Did you hear about the quote unquote incident? There was a trans. I don't even know. I need to be careful with the nomenclature. A natal male who had transitioned to a woman exposed their genitalia in a woman's changing room, and the woman got pissed off or something, and I think there's been protests for days now that have like backed up downtown Los Angeles, and a whole bunch of people have come out. And what's really interesting is this is an old classical case of basically feminist protection of from basically it's like Me Too versus trans, because the Me Too was all about not being able to be about increasing the penalties and protecting women from being victimized by men who wanted to sexually abuse them, which is what they claim, that this is not a trans person, that this is basically just a pervert man who wanted to expose himself to a group of women. And because he claims that, there's no way to prove whether you're trans or not, that they're just being discriminating against him.
But they're so wait, what do you mean expose themselves in a changing room? What kind of changing room? I think changing room. I think like a try on clothes place.
No, like not a massage parlor. That's what I was gonna say.
like a gym or something
like that. Spa or a gym or something like that.
So, yeah, I would also have to know about what it means by expose, because like take off your clothes and change. Like I have to say in Taiwan, I've seen a lot of old man genitalia.
I'm not gonna get into the nitpicky arguments, but let's just say a lot of people were canceled for exposing themselves to. A lot of men were canceled for exposing themselves to women who thought that it was sexual, and the men weren't basically. Nobody wanted to hear their side of the story on this, and I'm not saying this right or wrong.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Who's that comedian? That ginger comedian?
CK?
Yeah.
Oh,
he was exposing himself. It was definitely sexualized. I mean, there's a legitimate argument that women shouldn't be, that no one should be a victim to somebody exposing their genitalia to them in a sexual way. But then on the other hand,
but that's what I wonder is, was it in a sexual way?
see, that's the argument. But when gender and gender identity are so fluid and there's actually no concrete way of measuring this, that's what the counter protesters, I shouldn't say the counter protesters. This is what the Intercept labels anti-trans and what label themselves as anti-pedophilia protesters are arguing is essentially like a basically open term that anybody can just go into a woman's locker room and whip their dick out and start jerking off and being like, I'm a trans woman. Like,
well, that's sexual assault. You can't just start masturbating at someone. That's sexual assault. So there's laws about that already.
Okay,
so.
let's say you don't touch yourself, then you could expose yourself.
Yeah. But I would say that's similar problems that you could face if it was like man on man. Like if there was like I said earlier, I've seen many old Taiwanese men penises, and it hasn't ever been sexual. It's like not like something I prefer to look at, but it's also it would be different if they like ran up on me and like put me in a corner and were like, hey, how you doing there, little boy?
Right. But okay, let's take Harvey Weinstein, who like never cornered. I don't think he cornered anyone. He basically exposed himself on several occasions and just used power differentials basically to victimize women. So just because there's nothing illegal there is what he did not wrong, because he exposed himself to people who didn't want to see it. That's the thing with this exposure, this genital. First of all, I think that people are being really sensitive about this, and we should just all have mixed locker rooms. And if people want to expose themselves in there or go in there in the first place, do it at your own peril.
We could have you could
black holes of genitalia.
You could just, you could do like, you could have a big unisex one and then have like a bunch of small private ones. And if you don't want to go on the mass one, you just go on the private ones.
That sounds perfect. But what I'm saying is that I think this is interesting because it seems, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but it seems to me in a lot of ways like this is kind of a contradiction between people who are saying that gender is very fluid and women, I guess in this case, who, whether or not it's sexual, were saying that they didn't want to be exposed to men's genitalia in a woman's locker room.
This is obviously like a discussion that must be had by people who are like experts on this, not me.
But explain to me what you think an expert on male genitalia would be.
Well, I think people who are like better versed on like these sorts of like trans issues, or like or women also who would have like opinions on this. But that's the other thing is like, my main thing is like, this is not like my area of expertise. So and also this story specifically, the only thing, and I think it's an important thing to mention, the only thing I saw about this was a cop shooting a pro-trans protester point blank, like in the chest. For no reason.
I've seen dozens of like articles on this on MSN, and it's on the Intercept too. It's the first article on the Intercept right now.
I saw that there were articles about it, but
I'll read you the headline they have right now. As transphobes rally again at Los Angeles spa, police attack counter protesters.
Yeah, it's a clickbait title, but what I would say is that that's probably an unfair title, because not all those people are transphobes. But I bet you there were a lot of transphobes out there. I guarantee you could go through the video and there's a lot of people saying very vitriolic shit about trans people. Right. So I understand why they would write that, because they want to get clicks. That being said, as a person who is obviously one of the top journalists on our website, I think that's a misleading title, perhaps.
I think this has also gotten like so out of proportion. If people are really upset, let's just close public locker rooms altogether and have like a black hole. If people want to see like weird genitalia and expose themselves to other people, let's just let it be a free-for-all. And if not, let's just have private rooms, because this is, trans people are at best 2% of the US population. Like, this is really getting out of control, and it's honestly not relevant to most of our lives. Like,
I don't think you can just say like forget about 2% of the population.
I'm not saying forget about that. I'm saying forget about this issue and let's just solve it. And let's stop having protests and counter protests and being like, oh, we don't know what to do. There's a pretty clear solution here, which is just don't think about it.
I think unisex and then private options, I think, is probably the way to go. Yeah, that's generally where I would fall. But yeah.
Because I don't think there's no right or wrong answer to this. It depends on your take on a lot of these issues. It depends on your take on seeing male, female, trans, whatever genitalia in a locker room that some people are not expecting to do that. And whether you think it's an attack, because a lot of people, listen, this really is like feminists for years were basically. I remember having arguments on the pod with Ray about this.
I think you also have to. We should also state that feminist is also not a monolith. Like you have all kinds of different.
Neither
feminists.
are trans people. Nothing.
No, absolutely, exactly. Which is why, and obviously, this is not like a shot at you. I think you do often a very good job of like parsing this, but I just wanted that to be said because I know there are like trans exclusionary feminists and there are third way and second way feminists. So. It gets complicated.
I mean, we had Ray on here, and basically she was making the claim when we talked about this before that, and I think you backed her up on this, is that women are more likely to see themselves as victims when being exposed to male genitalia against their will than men being exposed to female genitalia. That was her claim, and she's a feminist scholar here in Taiwan. So
I think that is true, but it depends what we do with that information. Because I think that
castration.
If anyone ever sees you naked, castrated.
Just kidding. It's obviously just a joke.
Obviously,
folks.
yeah, obviously.
Let's just everyone should have privacy, and we probably shouldn't be showing each other our genitals in any case. Anyways, it's weird and it's like hairy and
outlaw sex. No more sex.
That's not what I'm saying.
Only test tube babies from now on.
Shared changing rooms are weird.
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there, and let's just let's avoid having to decide between feminist women's rights and trans rights, and just take away both their rights, and just have a black hole room.
Just take away everyone's rights.
Yes.
So you can take your private room, or you can take the question mark room. That's just a big room with only black lights in it. You just have to run in and run out.
I think the grunting is going to add a lot of atmosphere.
It's going to make people uncomfortable. All right, let's quickly move to another topic.
Sure. Caitlyn Jenner apparently released her tax returns, and her money, I don't know how she makes any money. Apparently she's been making like upwards of $1 million a year off her probably ghost-written books over the last couple of years.
I heard her revenue had dropped really
It dropped
big
a lot.
recently, which may be why she's running for office.
Maybe. She also showed up in the news right now, though, because lots of people in Australia are super pissed off. So Australia, because of COVID, has basically limited the number of flights into the country and limited the number of people who can get on those flights. So a lot of these airlines are actually running at a huge loss. So because of the quotas, some airlines are literally running flights with like 2-3 people on them.
Jeez.
But if you're a celebrity, you're exempt from those rules. So Caitlyn Jenner, who's a U.S. citizen and has no right whatsoever to go to Australia because she's a celebrity, managed to go to Australia when lots of Australians are stuck abroad and unable to get flights back.
Wait. Who made this rule?
The government there. Because,
the Australian government?
Yeah, because...
Then why are they mad at Caitlyn Jenner? They should be pissed off at the government.
Australian people are pissed off at Caitlyn Jenner and the government.
Well, they should really be mad at the government. I mean, don't get me wrong. Caitlyn Jenner is a piece of shit. The man. Person. Actually, I don't know if it's a man or a woman.
Who cares?
Doesn't matter. Person. But
in death, we're all gender free.
That's right. We're all gender fluid in death. But that seems like you should get after the government. I mean, yeah.
They are.
Yeah,
they're very critical of the government, but they're also like annoyed that this dumb who's like also trying to run for governor of California apparently is like basically breaching national COVID laws when even their own citizens can't get back in the country. It's kind of crazy.
That's absurd.
That's a weird.
It's a very strange story as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people saying that China did some of these recent cyber attacks now.
Right. Saw that.
This is like a thing that they say a lot of people are
Microsoft.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of people are speculating that more and more of this is going to happen, and it's going to continually look like this Microsoft attack, which they're alleging basically China somehow paid actors to do it. They didn't do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, lots of their hacker core are probably semi-private companies, but there's no separation between the private sector and the public sector within China. Let that be known, because there's no private sector corporation that doesn't have cadres of the Chinese Communist Party serving within its executive board or within its ranks, making sure that everything the company does follows Chinese Communist Party policy. So that's a bullshit argument. What's also interesting is that they threaten to retaliate against any measures the United States takes in their defense.
No, that's fine if they want to do that. But like, not just this.
Decouple.
This is the thing, is they're saying not just in China. They'll probably see this from other state actors. Which, yeah, your point is a good one. That, and even if there was for some chance like a small corporation that didn't have CCP members on its board, if the CCP wants to take it over, they just do. So,
I think what we should do is, if they can continue doing this, there should be like an open board, and they should consider disconnecting China from the internet altogether, like through ICANN, because China's already banned most Western companies anyway. So most of the internet traffic that's coming in and out from China right now is probably hackers, because it's very difficult for them to access basically anything else.
Yeah, my part of me would still want to leave it open for the small few that might get through the Great Firewall and see something that might make them think a little bit. We'll leave it at that.
I agree with you, but the government is making it increasingly difficult for them to cross that firewall.
Absolutely.
At a certain point, we just have to be like, if basically the only thing that's coming out of there is malicious attacks on us, then why are we even allowing them access to our information infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm still pretty apprehensive, but I mean, I get.
I'm not saying do it. I'm saying consider.
Yeah, no, I get your sentiment, and definitely something very serious needs to be done about this, because it can't be just allowed to continue. China cannot be treated as like a normal actor in the global, the global sphere, and then continue to do things like this, and not to mention all their various human rights violations all over Asia.
Let's ban the Olympics there.
Hell yeah, brother!
Yes. The first step.
Speaking of, already COVID cases in the Olympics, in the Olympic Village, and
saw that.
Yeah,
shameful.
It's pretty shameful.
Toyota pulled out of Toyota. One of their biggest sponsors pulled out of the Olympics.
Yeah, you've seen that. It's also, speaking of pulling out, there's all these reports of these like anti-sex beds.
What?
So they made these beds of cardboard, and a bunch of, I can't believe you haven't seen this. Almost every outlet I've seen has done a story about how they have anti-sex COVID beds at the Olympics, because usually they give out like free condoms, and apparently there's like a lot of coitus that occurs at the Olympic Games.
Which they're trying to stop COVID?
This is the thing. I read an article today that said that apparently that's like all totally wrong. They were never designed to be like anti-sex beds. They're like built from recycled cardboard. They're meant to be like green beds.
Okay.
And apparently people just like don't understand how to like translate the Japanese, and so they like all were like made up this story.
Ooh.
It's insane, man.
I'm going to skip the accent.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. But anyways, that's like been a big story. But the main thing is that, yes, majority of people in Japan not in favor of having the games there. No one should be having the games unless we first destroy the IOC and send all of them to Guantanamo with Jack Dorsey. After
Jack Dorsey first.
Jack, yeah, they can follow him there. He can warm up the cells for him. And we'll warm up the cattle prods. And then what needs to happen after that is my plan, my utopian plan for the Olympics is that we hold one event, and each event is held in a different country. So we get to hold them all over the world simultaneously. So it is a beautiful coming together of all these different places. All these places can get slightly more stuff, and they shouldn't have to build new infrastructure, just like LA is saying that they won't do.
I agree with you, but I don't think it needs to be all over the world. They could do a regional one, so they can at least have some kind of like pride thing for the hosts.
That's fine.
So
yeah,
but Southeast Asia or something.
The main thing is that it spreads out, so we can spread out the wealth that could be generated, and also reduce the amount of harm, because there is so much harm to local businesses, to homeless populations, to local animals, like the amount of local stray dogs and things that are just simply slaughtered, and homeless people that are arrested or thrown somewhere that's not their normal home, and these local businesses that can't access their business because they're shut down for security reasons or whatever. It's just
most of that is caused by the need, the necessitation by the IOC, the demand for new facilities for everyone, and basically a luxury hotel for all of them to bask in their power and glory for a couple of weeks. So
most of which are supposed to be built in like you said, a short amount of time by these countries that don't have the means to do it. So they build these things that they're never going to use again, and then they become dilapidated and just another pile of
Just give them
junk.
recycled cardboard beds in a giant room.
Recycled cardboard stadiums for all. That's what we need.
If the IOC had to sleep on recycled cardboard beds, I bet you then the organization would be a little bit more honest.
They're going to have to sleep on a much worse when we send them to fucking Guantanamo.
Well, the new IOC, the newly built IOC.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Speaking of stripping people of their assets, there's been a lot of stories about people making money, Congress people making money off of trades. One big one was Nancy Pelosi and her owning of Tesla stocks recently, but another one was Susan Rice.
Susan Rice, she's the old
Because
Secretary of Defense.
She's in the Biden administration right now.
I thought Susan Rice. Who was she under? She was under Obama.
That's right.
She's been out for a while. What was she? She was the old second. Yeah, she was the National Security Advisor from 2013 to 2017. What's she doing now? Director of the Domestic Policy Council. What does that title even mean?
I think it's an advisory position. But anyway,
so would she make money off selling? That's the question.
It's because she has holdings in, I think it's called the Line 3 pipeline. So she has, like, from what I saw in the report, like millions of dollars in it, and she refuses to divest. So
lock her up.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically Biden, who is the most progressive president since FDR, is trying to build more tar sand pipelines, by the way, which, going back to my boiling and seawater, is getting closer and closer as we build more of these pipelines. And they're just going to allow these people to make money off it. But I mean, like I said, it's pretty common. I think if you want to be a representative in America,
well, she's not a representative.
Even in an advisory position,
she's not a representative. She's in an appointed position. That makes it difficult.
Even if you're no, doesn't matter.
Well,
the new rule should be that if you're in government, you should make minimum wage, and you should only get paid when you're actually working. So when Congress is on break, they shouldn't get paid, and they should not be allowed to invest in anything. That's all you get is minimum wage. If we catch you buying one stock, one fraction of a Bitcoin, sorry, 25 years in jail. That's corruption. I think corruption should be treated like murder, honestly.
I think the corruption should be treated seriously, but I think that if you start trying to pay Congress people minimum wage, they're going to be more corrupt because while they are paid a lot more than minimum wage, I think the minimum wage should be increased, obviously, but I don't think that they should be paid less. Most of those people are like upper career people who shouldn't be making minimum wages. They're law school graduates. There's a reason we have like kind of a wage ladder here. I agree with you. They shouldn't be able to collect any money from outside of that. They shouldn't have any campaign contributions funding anything in their personal assets. They shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks. I totally agree with that.
They should have to divest everything before they get into office.
Sure, I agree with that. But I think that minimum wage should be drastically increased. But I still think that someone serving the United States government in an elected position should probably make more than a minimum wage, at very least as a symbol of the fact that they are in a very slightly exalted role. The fact that they're slightly better than like a Walmart checker in terms of their responsibilities that they hold.
I understand that take, but I disagree. I think they need to show that they really want to serve the country, and if they're not willing to do that, then fuck them. I don't give a shit. Sleep on the fucking... You'll get another fucking job.
First of all, they get to choose. I mean, it's a nonsense argument. They get to choose their own salary. You know that, right?
I know. Of course. But that's another fucked up thing. But if they were forced to like work on minimum wage, you can guarantee the minimum wage would be a lot higher. Obviously, I know they set their own salary, and we're not going to change it. But that's what I want. It's my heart's desire. But I think something that we really should focus on is making sure that they can't have any sort of investments. It's insane. It just begs for corruption.
Yeah, they should be. I mean, they should have the same insider trading laws applied to them at the very least. Well,
and they should come with a lot higher penalties, I think, because a lot of these people get caught doing things like insider trading, and
Martha Stewart got prison.
She wasn't a representative though. I'm
saying the penalties already. They're not. They can that weak. Like, it's just whether they're enforced, and they're not enforced for members of Congress.
Yes, and they also. I think also they should have extra penalties as members of Congress, because the damage that can do to our system of government, our way of life, is much more dangerous.
Probably.
But main thing is that they shouldn't be allowed to invest. If we can get there, I'll probably be all right.
Did you hear Texas? The Texas judge, I think it was a federal judge, overruled DACA. They said DACA's done, basically. No new request. Anyone who's already on there is basically like, who's already been granted DACA status is like, I think in kind of a hiatus right now while they figure out what to do, but there's no more new applicants. They said that basically the Obama administration just kind of went around Congress and that was unconstitutional. Which is... I
wonder if that'll go to the Supreme Court.
It
probably will.
It might, yeah. Well, and it will be interesting because the last few Supreme Court justices have been giving a lot of extra leeway to the executive branch, and the original claim was that Congress was unable to do this and this was an emergency move. But yeah, Obama's been out for a long time. This is that claim it's probably not going to hold up. But it will be interesting because if they do overturn it at the Supreme Court level, it will reduce executive power, which will be kind of a step backwards.
Well, I know there's a bipartisan group of legislators right now trying to push to roll back executive powers also on things like declaring war or like getting us into these conflicts, whatever sort of verbiage you want to use for it. But basically corralling some of these powers that were kind of unleashed under Bush and have continued to expand.
What makes me nervous about doing any of that is if there is like an emergency situation in Taiwan, that will curtail the president's ability to respond to it without getting congressional authorization, which could take months.
I wonder though, because I'm not exactly sure what the precise wording that they're calling for, but they are calling for more, congressional action on it. So that will be interesting. But as commander-in-chief of the military, you would think that he would at least be able to move troops in place. I think that's a little bit of a different situation than things like when we're doing invasions in the Middle East.
But here's the thing: from a legal perspective, the United States intervening in Taiwan would be considered by some to be an illegal invasion in the first place, because the United States doesn't have any territory here. Second of all, if there was an intervention, the Chinese military would do every single thing in their power to prevent striking U.S. forces in order to prevent any justification for them to intervene.
Right.
This would be done extremely carefully so that the United States has no legal justification. The only reasonable way that it could be done is if the president just ordered basically a direct strike on Chinese forces that were engaged in an attack on Taiwan.
I mean, they could order cruisers and different vessels to move around the island.
That's true, but that would do nothing if there's an invasion. If they don't strike U.S. forces, then
it would be pretty.
They'll just go around us.
Besides, if we put our ships like in port,
if we put our ships in the Taiwan Strait, they would be within basically shooting range of thousands of missiles. First of all, so we would almost at this point in 2021, we would probably never sail a carrier ever again into the Taiwan Strait, especially if there was a threat of war, because it would be almost instantaneously destroyed.
But you don't have to send a carrier. You could send smaller ships, and also, I mean, you just said that they're going to try not to shoot U.S. ships because
there'll be a lot of ships there doing nothing, just sitting watching, if they don't have authorization to strike Chinese troops, which is essentially more or less a declaration of war. If the legal definition is changed here, that any strike outside of congressional authorization is now illegal because it could lead to war. Then
right, I don't know if that's the claim from them. I just saw that they're
careful.
Yeah, for sure. It is important. It is important. That's why it's important to actually have these debates as opposed to just say like one way or the other, and to find the exact degree that we should. But yeah, I need to read. Because basically they're just saying they're like coming together to discuss and try to figure out what they're going to do. So hopefully as there's more details, I'll try to give you what they're saying. And again, like
Biden's going to be willing to sign that will limit his own presidential powers either.
I wonder. I mean, I don't know.
The notion of anything that limits presidential power passing like 66% is hopeful. Just say that.
We'll see. But maybe. I mean, depends who's in Biden's ear too, because...
his brain.
How many of his decisions is he actually making himself?
a couple little things here. The Danish cartoonist who drew that Muhammad cartoon back in the day that caused all those big problems.
Oh, in France?
No, in Denmark.
Oh, that one.
I think the first time he did it was in 2005, and then in 2006 they had those riots. Was it the Benghazi thing? It was like based off of that, right? That was so long ago. I didn't realize it was that long ago. Anyway, he died. R.I.P. R.I.P. because he's a human being. I'm not making any comment. Another thing really fast. Did you hear about the Ben and Jerry's thing?
A little bit.
Yeah, I don't really get what they think they're doing. Because, like, they're like, oh, we're supporting the Palestinians by refusing to sell them ice cream.
I kind of wondered the same thing. Because, like, I saw that they're still selling to Jerusalem, but they're not selling to occupied territories.
It's when you say occupied territories, my question at first was, are they not selling in Jewish settlements in what they consider the occupied territories there, or Arab settlements? And apparently it's both. So they're just no more ice cream for any Arabs. And by the way, so apparently they're not going to renew the license in Israel. So the whole problem here for the Israeli government, which is being very poorly covered, is because they're not renewing the license. Because the ice cream is manufactured in Israel, they're closing all the manufacturing facilities. So they're basically firing 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so much for pro-labor.
Well, I mean...